Why has Lu Xiaojun shrunk so dramatically in size? For you regulars who have no idea who this is, well, shame on you. But he's one of the most famous and perhaps debatably one of the greatest Olympic weightlifters of all time. He's gone from a lean and jacked top-tier gold medal athlete with striated pecs and multiple Olympic golds under his belt to, well, whatever you'd call this smaller version. A lot of people have been saying things like the current smaller version now looks like he doesn't or hasn't ever even trained, which is in my opinion a bit silly. He still looks fairly lean and athletic despite the standards that have been fixed into the minds of the people saying those things. But regardless, why is he so much smaller? Well, the obvious answer is pretty obvious. He's hopped off of the special Chinese sauce, but is that all there is to it? Yes, well, at least a large majority of the issue. But there are certainly a few other components that all factor into the equation, so let's go over them. First, he's off cycle, but we don't mean the pharmaceutical cycle alone. His last major competition was the Tokyo Olympics, in which he won gold medal at the age of 37, which would be impressive in any sport, but even more so for Olympic weightlifting, where the peak age is normally in the early 20s. But most of the best weightlifters who have these extremely high-level peak performances at major competitions almost always take big rest periods afterwards, and this is nothing new. The years of training up to that competition will place enormous stress on their bodies, both physical and mental, and that thing people seem to avoid, the discussion of PEDs, which work in perfect unison alongside that training, will even further enhance the stress on the body, with even more detrimental effects on the body even after the training diminishes. So training, just like anything requiring a lot of effort that places the body in places it doesn't really want to be in, usually requires a period of cooling off afterwards just to allow the body to take a breath and try to stabilize all of the chaos that it has just endured. Secondly, he's deliberately dropping a weight class for the next Olympic cycle, because the class he was in for the previous one, 81 kilograms, has been removed. So either he needs to bulk up to 89 kilograms when he has already said that he has trouble filling out the 81 kilogram class, or cut down to 73 kilograms, so either gain 8 kilograms or lose at least 8 kilograms. Neither one is an easy option for a 38-year-old elite athlete already at the limits of his abilities. But if we look at the option of moving up, we have to consider that barely making 81 kilograms is the culmination of his current highly stressful training cycles, so he would have to do that plus another 8 kilograms. It is very unlikely that without resorting to the strongest and most obvious anabolics, he would be unable to gain 8 kilograms of lean muscle tissue, and gaining 8 kilograms of fat would probably not help him in any way. And on top of that, he would have to compete against the people who already exist in that weight range comfortably. So that would be a tremendous ask of him and his health. But if he cuts down 8 kilograms, he potentially gets weaker, yes, but the actual process of it is quite a bit more simple. If that 81 kilogram is at peak performance, presumably bolstered by a hefty backup of PEDs, to reach 73 kilograms might actually be much closer than 89 kilograms for him at a non-peaked and pumped up level. Currently, he says his body weight is around 74 kilograms, so that means he only needs to drop 1 kilogram and he is eligible to compete in a 73 kilogram class as he is now. And if that out of training deflated Lu at 74 kilograms is able to still squat 150 kilograms for a set of 3 with relative ease, it is not that difficult to imagine that with another period of training, he will be able to get closer to competitive weights around that weight class. Third, is he actually that much smaller? Obviously, at peak times where we have seen him before, Lu has looked incredibly full and with well-nourished intramuscular cells, but he has also been under much more favourable lighting conditions, and I think we all know that lighting makes or breaks a physique looking good or not. Clearly he is smaller, but I think that is all there is to it. He has lost size. but he is not noticeably fatter, and most of the muscle definition and separations are still present, even in poor lighting. The muscles just lack that fullness and roundness that muscles have when pumped and absolutely jam-packed full of the glycogen that the best PEDs all stuff them with. Fourth, if you haven't been following what's been going on in many parts of China recently, you won't realize that many of the people living there have been in total lockdown in response to COVID. And that is including national level athletes who, just like everybody else, have been subject to a very limited supply of food and ability to go outside and do anything at all. So this, combined with a restricted PED supply, have meant that Lu has been able to do very little except rest and train in minimal ways. And he seems to have taken that opportunity to improve his health and well-being in preparation for the training cycle ahead of him, because he is not an idiot and has some of the best coaches available in the entire world. There is also the possibility that in reality Lu has no aims to compete in Paris, but he is acting as though he does to further boost his younger teammates' efforts in training, so that they are forced to train that much harder and achieve a much greater level when they do reach the point of competition. Fifth and finally, weightlifting, or Olympic weightlifting to be precise, is a pretty terrible sport as far as muscular hypertrophy goes. The amount of work to the amount of result in muscle size is incredibly subpar in comparison to things like bodybuilding, and bodybuilders have outgrown weightlifters in much shorter amounts of time. The top level weightlifters will usually have been training for 10 to 20 years to achieve the physiques they have, including PED use. Just look at the Bulgarians or any weightlifting team who did not supplement with bodybuilding type movements. And the Bulgarians were infamous for being on very high amounts of drugs and look much more average Joe than Lu does in his off-season. Whereas a bodybuilder could achieve and outclass that same physique in a few years with PED use. So, in summary, Lu Xiaojun has a pretty good idea of what he is doing. Most people have an inflated idea of what the sport of weightlifting alone will bring in regards to muscle mass, especially while natural or using the fairly minimal levels of PEDs that weight-restricted and quote-unquote tested athletes will use. Instagram and the current sphere of media does not help this at all. People only show other people what they want them to see, and now more than ever, they only show other people what they think will generate the most traffic and money to their businesses. It's not that complicated. An athlete takes time off training hard, takes time off PEDs, has restrictions in food, has to cut down weight in the future anyway, and takes part in a sport that without PEDs does very little for muscle mass in the first place. But that's my take on it. It's not arm wrestling, but it's sports, training, PED use, and the mess of hysteria, all of which go hand in hand with arm wrestling. Sign up to my Patreon for more content and training programs, and head over to the Discord to chat with the memesters that seem to make up the current member list. And I'll see you next time.